What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, Jim to my right, and Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn across from us. We've been having a lot of good precast conversation, guys. A lot of smiling, a lot of laughing, a lot of joking around, and it reminds me a lot of deer camp.
Oh, wow, that was good. Yep.
There he is, folks. Mark Boardman.
The round two, the next evolution. We did our first deer camp together last year. You can watch it on the Vortex Nation YouTube channel.
Yep.
Really fun video. It was our camp. Eric and Sawyer had a camp. Cooper was up hunting the land of giants, as he always does. But this is round two. No cameras. No business, all pleasure. And, man, what a delightful time.
It was a good time.
Something threw me off about it, though, this year, Jim.
Tell me.
You made tacos.
It was
You know what? That is an interesting observation.
Strictly utilitarian decision.
Like, did you struggle with it?
When you have a group of people coming over, so we tried to do something the night before opening day, and I tried to invite some neighbors and friends and things over.
Well,
when you have
the whole time out, a little background. I've never met anybody in my life with more of an emphatic, steadfast, concrete position of how superior burritos are to tacos. So this is for those who aren't familiar with Jim and his passion for burritos. We had tacos for dinner, like Ryan said.
Okay, here's the deal. Burritos are superior to tacos. Yes. The same way that, I'm just going to say this, I believe burgers are superior to hot dogs, all right? Doesn't mean I'm not going to slam a roller dog or two or three because they're still very good, okay? So it's a very similar thing in my mind.
You're not anti-taco, but you are pro-burrito.
Right, yeah. So if given the decision and with ultimatums set in place and absolutes set in place, then I will say I am anti-taco in favor of the burrito. But I'm not, in general terms, anti-taco.
This is a perfect time to get the listeners involved. In the comments below, let us know
Burritos
taco or burrito.
Yes.
What is your preference?
But
And we're just going to lump street tacos into the tacos category.
Yes, of course. Street tacos are tacos. It's in the name.
Well, I think some people, maybe for a lot of people it goes without saying. I just wanted to make that clear.
You feel the need to separate those out from what has been become affectionately known on the interwebs as white people tacos.
Is that true?
Yes.
Why would that even be the case?
Yeah.
Because that is its own genre.
It's an entity.
It's become it's people have realized now that actually what they have been eating a lot of people have been eating their entire lives as tacos is in fact to the native taco country not really a true taco.
It ain't real.
It's just
to semi-quote Dave Chappelle, all this time I thought I loved tacos because they're delicious. Turns out, I'm genetically predisposed to liking tacos.
Yeah. But if you have, we're off track, but if you have a white flour tortilla with ground beef and some seasonings, and you have lettuce, cheese, tomato, and Ortega, that is what has become known as a white people taco. And I'm okay with it. I like those.
But that's like a regular.
I just feel like you're trying to also make
that just sounds like a soft shell taco to me.
Right.
Street taco to me is a little different.
Is the shell not soft?
It is, but it's nuance.
Anyway, when you have a big group of people coming over, tacos is much easier to do because a lot of people don't know how to roll a burrito, and that frustrates me. Not that I'm mad at people for not knowing how to roll a burrito because there is a lot of technique involved, but watching people try to fold a burrito when they don't know how is definitely a pet peeve of mine.
Well, and it's also not one of those things where you can be like, "Hey, just give me that."
Oh yeah, because then your fingers have to get in the burrito to do it right.
You're all up in the business.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So tacos is like, here, just like fold the tortilla in half-ish with some stuff in the middle. And
I've probably told this story before on the podcast, but it still sticks out to me. When I worked for Cabela's, they would do at the retail store restaurant. Like they'd email out like whatever was the the special of the day or whatever it was, and they'd always say, come and get Rick's hand rolled burritos, and like the fact that Rick was sticking his hands in my burritos was not a selling factor for me.
You ever seen a mechanically rolled burrito? I'm sure they exist. Maybe those microwave ones.
It's like it's one of those things where it's like don't ask, don't tell. You know what I mean?
It is one of those things, isn't it? So that's what the military was talking about.
Oh, this whole thing started with burritos.
And hands. Oh, wow.
Should we talk about deer hunting?
Yeah, we should.
The tacos were great, by the way.
They were
Thank
fantastic.
You. Thank you.
Speaking as a taco person, they're great. They're
Not
great.
bad.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah. Deer camp, fantastic. Pretty short deer camp, as it was last year, but it's like perfect.
2 nights, yeah, 2 nights and 3 hunts.
Yeah,
basically.
It was the 3 of us, kind of I guess usual suspects plus
JP, the neighbor.
Mm-hmm. And
Joe was there, not my brother Joe.
Right.
Oh yeah, and my cousin from Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Eric, what's up?
Yeah. So cool time. Should we just here's another thing I liked about deer camp. I enjoy hunting with you guys. We kind of don't do it enough, so like having something in place is like great. For me, it's generally on the tail end of hunting my tail off. Unfortunately, this last year and the year before, to no avail, bow hunting whitetails. And
again, I want publicly to state, it's not that you didn't have opportunity that you could have exploited. It's because you chose.
I was semi-choosy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for people out there that are thinking, what is this guy even doing? What even is that?
You know when you talk to Mark and you're like, how did it go?
What the hell is even that?
You know when you talk to Mark and you're like, how did it go? And he's like, I skunked again. I didn't see anything.
Translation.
And then the conversation keeps going, and he's like, I saw like 13 deer. And you're like, whoa, so didn't see anything, and you saw 13 deer, and you were only out for 2 hours. So, like, tell me about that.
Don't mistake Mark for not deadly. Mark is deadly.
Thank you. You guys are being quite generous.
Oh,
I do not want to paint the picture that I am some sort of bow hunting whitetail master, because I am not. And also, like, when I say I'm being choosy, like, 3-year-old buck dead. Like, so like, I don't want, I'm not trying to say I'm, I'm trying to get him to 6 years old this year. Like, no, like you got a pretty good set of horns on your head. Like, and I get an opportunity, it's going down. But I saw during the bow season, not that that's what we're talking about. I saw one legit big deer, very close encounter. Just didn't go my way. Didn't even end up drawing my bow. But and then I saw one other like nice buck, 3-year-old buck. I saw another buck that was probably like 3 or 4. Just both of those guys didn't come close enough. And then it was just like the year of the 2 points, what I call the 2 point around here, which other people would oftentimes call a 6 point.
You're not a brow counter.
Oh,
I'm a weird hybrid. Like when it comes to like if you. For some reason, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, so if somebody's heard me sitting there like, you said that before, I did. You got me. Like growing up, about as far west as you can get. Like we talked about,
East side of the West Coast.
We were on the east side of the West Coast. Yes.
Yeah.
Like if you saw like the term 4 point would be like reserved for like, oh my gosh, you saw a 4 point. And then you would delineate that with, I saw a 4 point with eye guards. So like it's like kind of 2 separate things.
Yep. I also think it's interesting, eye guards v brows.
Yes.
He's got brows, or he's got eye guards. Brows seem to be reserved for very eastern mule deer or whitetails only. Eye guards is for western mule deer, and then your subspecies.
I like
the
saying
Columbia
brows
blacktail.
because when you say eye guards, I just keep thinking that they got like 3M eye protection on.
Sure.
They run around with little.
Is that
safety
ANSI rated?
glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slight side note: the last deer that I did shoot with my bow would have been, I guess, what we would call around here a 7-point. But one of his eye guards was slick on that side. That's what would have made him a 7, and huge gaping wound above the eye on that side. And I'm like, holy, they are
His
eye guards.
eye was unguarded.
He was left unguarded.
Wow,
So like
okay.
the nomenclature matches
Fits.
their function.
I can't wait until we talk about the injury your deer this year at deer camp sustained, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. And so anyway, so to me, like 4-point is like this magical thing. And then when people are like, oh, I saw a 4-point here, then I'm like, oh my gosh. But then I have to like remind myself, I'm like, oh, that
1,
was like
2, 3, 4 points,
like a
or
fork buck.
2x2,
So like
or 4x4.
I still like call fork bucks oftentimes 2 points.
It's
But
okay.
then people around here probably think I saw a spike.
Yep. Nope.
And then sometimes I'll say I saw a 2-point with eye guards. Oftentimes around here, I use the word fork because then that implies, just the 2 points.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a me
Fair.
thing. And I'm not like, but interestingly enough, though, not that anybody cares. If I saw around here, like if I saw a little bit bigger deer, I'd be like, oh, I saw a little 8, or I saw a nice 8, or I saw a big 10. But for some reason, once I get down to like a forky type buck, it just the wheels come off for me around here. There, I said it's out there.
When he sees the small ones, he just gets those flashbacks to Washington.
Yeah.
Where if you
And
at
little
least
blacktails.
at least for me growing up, you saw a 2-point.
Shoot him.
It's time to get to shooting. Yeah.
Get that bar sewing.
My brother passed up a 2-point this year. Couldn't believe it.
Wow, he's really grown up, huh?
I
He
don't
got his
think
pinky
so.
up all of a
I
sudden,
know.
or
Yeah, I
what?
took it. I was like, that's a poor decision.
Your brother, huh?
Yeah.
Blood?
Yeah.
Long pause.
Blood and everything. blood and everything. Yeah, I
All
think
the
he
juices.
had a fair amount of season left. I can't. Anywho, we get to deer camp. Jim, describe. We talked about the tacos a little bit. Strong vibes, I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to
Oh, do we
talk
need?
about that.
Yeah.
What I like about it is, one, deer camps are dying. The traditional deer camp where there's a congregation of men and friends and it's just a good time that's a lost thing. Everybody's kind of out for themselves, or their deer camp is dissolved because people got old or people got interested in other things. I walked in late, as I usually do, and there's, like you said, friends and neighbors. There's kids on the floor. Everybody's conversing about different things. People brought dishes to pass. And I'm just like, this is great.
I still got to get my neighbor's pie tin thing back.
Sure.
Dish.
Oh, from the
His pie
wild
dish from the blackberry pie.
Oh,
We do need to talk about kind of the food throughout the hunt because that was a really cool part of it.
it was. And so it's been so long since I've had the opportunity to have that, because we had a quote traditional deer camp, and like somebody always brought the bars and somebody always brought the breakfast foods and somebody always, and there it was. There was community. There was fellowship. Like I said, little kids running around making noise, breaking stuff, which is fun.
Yeah.
And then some friendly banter and some poking and what gun did you bring here? The whole thing. It was the whole ball of wax. And you're bringing it back, Jim.
Trying to.
You did. You succeeded. Everybody was there. All the regular players.
It is fun. It feels like a send off, and then it's like the folks who are gonna hunt stay and wake up early and
Yep.
head a field, and then also that night was when we do drawing of cards to see who's gonna go sit where and pick their spot. And there really was no spot that was like the primo spot this year, or maybe in any given year. It wasn't necessarily just something about this year, but I feel like there was a smattering of pretty decent spots, and we all just took our best guess. But
Or let the cards choose.
or let the cards choose.
They choose your fate.
Yeah.
They do. They do.
Oh, we should build a Plinko board for next year.
I mean, actually, that would save some time. That would save some time. Some people get a little hung up on their decision for applying.
You know me. It's like, I'll let everybody else pick, and I'll just,
Oh, the martyr
yeah.
Classic.
of the group. Oh,
But you know
wow.
what?
Has everybody else gotten a
I'm
chance?
surprised you didn't bring up why he showed up late because he was,
Oh yeah, because he was slaving here at work, making sure everybody else was ready for their opening day.
I
and
did zero my rifle before leaving there.
Yeah, I think it was the last thing you did on your way out.
That
the
is
door.
correct. My barrels were probably still warm when I pulled into the drive.
Yes. I just want to make sure everyone else's gun is sighted in before old Ryan here steps up to the line, sights in his gun. Has everybody here gotten a chance? Oh, okay. All right. Good. Now that you're all aware that I'm the martyr of this group, I would like to step up and. Are you sure? You wouldn't like to? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I thought I heard that somebody else still wanted to go. I was going to let them go if they hadn't gone, but then I heard that they went. So now that everyone else is gone, I feel comfortable.
So there's absolutely no way I could put somebody else before myself. Is that what I'm getting from the group here?
At this point, I have ensured that I have placed myself last.
Correct. So like I said, friendly banter. It was all there. Whole package.
The worst kind of people to have.
But
as
I think a
friend.
Plinko board, I can't argue a Plinko board. Like,
that would be
good.
that would be fun.
like what determined the fate? The earth.
We got enough. Yeah, gravity.
Yeah.
We got
Gravity.
enough time to make that up for next
I
year.
mean, the
but-
cards are somewhat a game of chance, right?
Yeah,
where,
they are.
you know,
But then once
deliberate.
you deliberate once your turn is up.
So what
to
happens
choose.
is Jim selects cards. He's the master of puppets behind all this, and it's the high card, or he determines it the low card. Whatever it is, what it is. You pick your card. You're issued your Plinko chip. Walk to the board. Drop the Plinko. Tink, 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 down it goes.
That's what
That's where
decides.
you end up.
Yeah.
Where previously you pick the card and you kind of go like, if you have the high card or low card, then you get first choice and down the line.
I'm sitting in the swamp. I'm sitting by the big tree. I'm sitting by the little tree. Kind of, yeah.
I will say that we all got our spots, and I think that there was basically like every potential spot that you could go, minus like 2 of them were filled. I
got first choice. I went rogue and just did a hang and hunt.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you were like, I don't want to sit in one of those blinds.
So, which is funny because you went the hardest route, which I had a great deal of admiration for. It was cold.
I went over my boot.
It
Yep.
was.
And you walked through a swamp. You went over
you
your
did?
boot.
I didn't actually know that.
And then you sat in the wind.
It wasn't that bad.
It was windy where I
didn't-
was.
Maybe I was in the trees a little bit more or something. I don't know.
King of the trees.
Yeah, the tree might.
It was cold. I got it was cold, but
It was cold.
yeah, that little creek that you cross. It's not the water depth that gets you. It's the depth at which you sink into the mud.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a big enough.
Soft bottom.
I can't get across in a jump.
No.
I misjudged that too. I looked at that. I was like, I can jump that. Like, I've seen parkour. Like, I know what's up. Yeah, no.
If you go to jump a creek and it doesn't work, you end up worse off than if you just tried to walk
100%.
through it. Yeah, pretty much every time.
100%.
But you know what I always say is that wherever you see the water sitting completely still, that's where it's the shallowest.
The lessons we learn only in the field, Jim.
First creek crossing.
Sploosh?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was just sort of like, oh yeah, it's going to be shallowest right there. Oh, that's my waist.
that big glassy pool of still water.
No.
Not that running stuff where I can see the bottom.
Yeah.
Speaking of that creek, though, I think I will under the tree this year. I may be buying myself a couple 330 conibears.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was kind of slow on that opening morning though.
It was. Going from my hunt, I thought I was off to a banger start. And I nearly made my gun go bang. It just gets daylight. I'm checking,
Never mind then. I guess I say I
Well-
wasn't even fully aware. Maybe it wasn't slow.
Well, I checked the time, right? And like I can tell that it's shooting light, and I look down, I'm like, yep, it's shooting light. And man, just like 2 minutes later, I hear, shh. I'm like, that's a deer. And I look over, I'm like, okay, there he is. And he was behind some stuff. Or I didn't know it was a buck at first. I'm like, okay, cool, there's a deer behind some stuff. I was in my saddle, so I kind of like grab my rifle, get around, kind of get ready in a position to shoot if I need to shoot this deer. It comes through, and he was like kind of like some like forky, like I think I saw like an extra tine on one side. Never really saw if he had eye guards or not. And I mean, this is like right off the bat, and I'm like, I picked the right spot. I mean, it's just gotten daylight, and I've got a buck right here. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna let him walk, and so he goes off and does his thing. Only deer I saw that entire morning. I think I hunted till like 11 or 11:30 or something like that, till we kind of went back and met. So like, but I was just like, dude, it is. And he even looked back. Like he looked back, and I'm like, oh, buddy, let's go. Nothing.
Man,
I saw the same 2 deer twice. So to say I saw 4 deer is technically not correct. A mature doe and a younger doe, and then I saw a super fork. So he was an impressive fork for a fork.
Like, use your hands. What are we talking here?
yeah, use your hands.
So, I mean, my fingers aren't long enough, but like, from pedicle to top, probably about like that. And of course, normal curvature plus, a fork.
Okay.
And so I think next year he has a chance to be a respectable deer. I debated. I thought, boy, howdy. And I didn't shoot him. It would have been an absolute chip shot, and let him walk. And yep, that was the last time I saw him. I didn't hear any gunfire, so I'm hoping he skated by. But I got to look at a lot of birds. Man, you got some.
Well, because you were the
wildlife.
sorghum sniper that morning, weren't you?
You got a lot of wildlife out there, which was super cool. Because I'd been out there prior to you revitalizing the land, and she's a moonscape.
Well, yeah, it was up until August of this year because we planted that cover crop there, and that cover crop's got a little bit of everything though, including, I mean, it had sunflowers even in it, and I mean.
I thought I was going to be able to see deer sneaking through there. Ha-uh.
Dang,
Dude,
I did too. I thought it would be.
When they step foot in there, it's like the predator when he activates his cloaking device.
That's
it's
it,
just like, boop, they're gone.
Man.
And like I watched.
I thought you'd be able to just look out and be like, there's a bedded one.
I thought so too. I picked that stuff apart. And I 1,000% guarantee you I overlooked deer.
Yeah.
Because watching, especially when the 2 doe returned to the sorghum and stepped in, they went from visible to invisible. And I'm sitting there posted up with my binos, and I'm looking, and then it's all of a sudden like a head turns. You're like, yep, there she is. And then she takes like 2 more steps, and her head goes down. You lose her for a few seconds, and then that's it.
Just gone.
Yep, you can see the sorghum move, but they're just invisible.
Yeah.
Very good cover for them.
Because there's a local drone company here, and I rented a thermal drone to try out, and we were flying it. And I helped 2 neighbors find their deer from bow season. And we flew over that sorghum stuff, and I flipped on the thermal, and you could see it was like, there's one bedded, there's one bedded, there's one bedded. And so, yeah, I just assumed it'd be like coos deer hunting, where if you just look long enough, you might see an ear twitch or something, but not quite.
It's such a disruptive.
Yeah, because it's not
There's
just sorghum, because it has all the hairy vetch underneath and all that stuff. But yeah, that was an interesting spot. I saw like 50. So when I say slow, I mean in terms of bucks, I saw like 15 does come out 20 yards from my blind at one point, and it was just like just running across this trail. That was the only sign of life that I saw, other than 10,000 squirrels that morning.
Yep.
And I just kept looking down this one spot where I was like, man, I swear something's gonna come out of there. Nothing. And it was kind of, I feel like for me, the rest of deer camp until the next day, the next morning, it was kind of the same thing for me. I find myself in these spots where like, man, I know it's going to happen here. And then it would just be like, not a soul.
Weird.
Yeah.
You were in a little bit, kind of a spot, like similar to me, but like I could only shoot 40 yards.
Yeah.
Where I set up. Like I was in a bow stand with a rifle, essentially. Yeah. And you had kind of like 2, you could maybe shoot into the timber a little bit, but primarily like kind of like two tracks going either way.
I was at like the ankle of an L.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ankle. I'd say his knee, the ankle of an L. Okay. Yeah.
But
So, were you finding when you were seeing deer, were they coming across slow enough that you would get a shot? Or
yeah, they did. In fact, actually, and part of my issue was that the first 4 that were all like I would say the bigger does, jumped out into the trail, and they were really close to me. And so I sort of snuck over. I had my gun on them, crosshairs on, safety off. And the problem was that there was 3 who were heads visible, and there was a 4th one that was the big one. And her head, I later learned it was a her, was behind a tree, and she was like doing, I don't know if she was eating or something like that, but her head was down behind the tree, and I'm like, that's the big one. I'm curious if that head comes up, if I can see if that's a buck or something like. So I'm trying to pick this whole scene apart, and I mean, I had the absolute opportunity to shoot, but then you just wait too long because you get greedy, and you're like, ooh, maybe I can.
Yeah.
And then they stood there plenty long enough until they finally just sort of like got nervous and spooked, and then the whole crew behind them was just sprinting across. So that was that. But tons of does.
Yeah.
Everywhere. We even discussed if that's a problem potentially for the buck scene, which it may be.
Could be. I mean, you can definitely, which, we'll get there. I mean, we did. But yeah, you could stand to take a few does off there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody kind of has a good morning. So we all saw deer.
Yep.
Saw cervids, yes.
Cousin saw some deer.
Yes, he did.
I can't remember if he saw a buck that morning or not.
He was being choosy because he knew he had to go all the way back home, take a flight. He was there on kind of a turn and burn trip. So, and plus I think he'd already shot a buck archery season, so he was feeling choosy. But
yeah, we come in, we have a nice lunch.
So you and I took a quick little nap. Kind of.
Oh, we did sneak upstairs.
Yeah.
you did.
Yep.
Yes, the living quarters were abuzz with activity once again. A lot of neighbors came over. I get a little sleepy after lunch, after a early get up morning of hunting.
It was rice from the tacos left over and hamburger from the tacos left over.
Taco fried rice.
A large pile of that. Large. 2 servings. Very hungry.
Can we address real quick? This podcast is just, I guess, it's just a recap. So we're just going into some of these nuances. Can we address Mark's breakfast? We learned that Mark at home apparently doesn't get calories.
Yes.
One of the most incredible things I've ever seen. We had, I made French toast, sourdough French toast, and then we had, and so I was like, hey,
is this
guys.
necessary to point out?
Absolutely it is.
It's so
Absolutely.
necessary because
call
last night I put butter on a cracker. And I thought of you, dude.
How much?
like a reasonable amount.
Mark, this isn't even negativity. This is more just, this is shock and awe. So
I'm just impressed.
yeah. So there's some French toast sitting there, some butter.
Yep.
And honey that we got from the farm this year that was like an unexpected, literally we found a bee box and it was like somehow still a buzz, literally. So I'm like, hey, put some honey on this. That's what I did. It's like delicious. Mark comes down, sees the butter, grabs about 3 tablespoons.
Accurate amount.
For 1 slice.
Yep.
Tosses it on. It starts melting down. Gets a heaping tablespoon and a half of honey. Throws that on there. And proceeds to just inhale it.
As human beings,
I could see your heart quivering.
it took a minute to process it.
I asked Mark, do you not get butter at home? And it's not just regular butter; it's really good butter.
I think you guys were just giving me a hard time. I said I don't get this at my house. Here's what truly happened.
Big calorie guy. You're saying that I lied.
No, I cannot dispute
Empty
that
cot,
there
beer can.
was what some might consider an excessive amount of butter on that piece of French toast. You used the word melting, Jim. The butter, I got there late, and so it was a little bit cooler. The butter was still cool. I wanted butter evenly distributed on my piece of
Oh,
French
but it wouldn't
toast.
soften and spread, so you
But
just had to
what-
put the cold
so
butter
I
everywhere.
Put little, one might describe as blocks of butter distributed evenly throughout the toast, wherein seeing said quantity of butter, knew that I need to compensate with the sweet of the locally sourced honey, and that's how we ended up where we ended up. Now, all that said, absolutely delicious.
Yeah. Oh,
Th-
yeah.
I have to imagine
that
it was.
a treat. And I'll say this, as human beings, we are genetically programmed, that's part of the obesity epidemic, to want, desire, and crave fats and sugars. And
You were just honoring your primal instincts.
I was going to use the same verbiage, Jim.
For
with
context,
that
if you're
breakfast.
wondering about the even distribution, if you could take what would be the same square footage, if you will, of 4 s'mores. No, maybe 5 s'mores, standard half grams. The amount of butter per gram would be akin to the amount of chocolate that you would put 2 pieces of Hershey's on top of there.
I would say
Thickness greater, though.
it was almost like looking at musubi, where the French toast was the bed of rice. And then instead of having like a slab of Spam on top, it was just a slab of butter. It was like you were layering.
I bet that
that's what it
slapped,
was.
though, buddy.
Oh,
I bet that slapped.
it slapped. Maybe that's what contributed to my nap.
True. Yes.
I need to lay down for a while.
Yeah.
And it did. It probably also contributed to your primal ability to shoot a deer later on.
You're darn right. I want to backtrack just a little bit. So we talked about
I want some butter right now. So
the locally sourced honey, which I will say, very unique. What I'd call like whatever flavor tones to it. I've never had honey that tasted like that. It was like extra sweet and just absolutely just exquisite.
very light colored.
It tastes like there. That's all I can say.
And so with that, I also wanted to bring up the locally sourced taco meat that we had with the tacos, Jim. Maybe tell
We were
that
trying
story.
to go for a little locally sourced everything. Do we have to tell that? That story involves some embarrassment, which is then followed up by beef. Because
right, but I just thought
we
because
have
we
cattle-
always get to embarrass me all the time that maybe that went for other people. No,
we have cattle on the farm. 2 escaped. They were gone and living in some woods.
Jim, they went
for
feral.
3 weeks. They did. They got wilder and wilder as time went on. And because as the farmer, you're liable for the cattle that you have and what they do when they're not where they're supposed to be. We seized an opportunity at one point when they were in sight, and we made beef.
And that's where your food comes from.
Yeah. Yes, and that little
Exquisite.
marquee is where
Very
your food
good.
comes from.
Very good.
and I thought it was awesome. Another delicious as well. So we've covered the locally sourced beef tacos, the honey that we had with our French toast, and then we later on we had another thing that we'll get to too as far as the food. The only thing we didn't really have time for was the darn deer meat.
Locally sourced Papa Murphy's pizza. Is that what you're gonna?
Oh, those were good too.
Artisan
No,
crafted.
the blackberry pie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that was good.
that was special.
That was good.
Yeah. But wait, so opening night, is that what you're getting to now?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we switched.
Mark
we
put
kind
one in
of
the earth.
we do a little blind swap.
Yankee swap.
Not to be confused with wife swap.
Right.
You ever see that, Chappelle? That's a pretty funny one too. Yeah, I went to actually it was kind of like a freshly set up blind.
Yeah, in the woods.
And kind of like in that marsh area, you know, and get in there, and man, I was like, I like it here, you know, like you kind of had that I guess canary grass, like marsh type grass. I had a big marsh behind me with some timber pretty far away, pocket of timber bordering the marsh in front of me. I was like, there's a lot going on here. I like this. And man, about halfway through that afternoon sit, I looked behind me, probably like the spot that in hindsight, it makes sense to me, but also like at the time I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect deer to come from there. They came from directly behind me out of the brush. I mean, they were 10 yards behind the blind.
Oh, geez.
On the red pile?
They eventually went there, yeah.
Big
And,
thicket of honeysuckle and American wild plum.
And then that red pile you talk about is just some
Earth.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So, of course, I make a little noise turning to look that way, and I see their heads kind of snap to attention. But my head is not far enough that I can tell exactly what the far one is. That's kind of like just a little bit, further back, I guess, for my vision. So now I'm stuck there with my neck craned for, minimum 5 minutes. Felt like an eternity. My chiropractor will agree. And eventually they work their way out. I'm like, okay, cool. That's 2 does. I'm able to get into a position where I can relax. They hang out there for a long time. I saw one more doe in front of me, and then I looked up, and boom, I'm like, oh, that's a bigger body deer just materialized out in the marsh. Throw the gun up. I'm like, he's kind of heavy. Looks like he comes out a little bit. I was like, like I said, I was coming off a pretty rough bow season. I was like,
it's time.
That's good enough for me. I'm going to shoot this buck. And so get a rest on the blind, shoot, hit him good, end up having to, he just didn't tip over. I'm like, I'm going to shoot him again. I shoot him again. And he kind of like takes a few steps. And as he's walking away, I'm like, is he just a 2-point? Because I like when I first did my assessment, which again, I wasn't going to be too picky. I was like, oh yeah, he comes up. I can see, whatever point there. Almost like, I'm sure he's got a few more. Like if you said, Mark, what is it? I go, oh, he's like a 2-year-old 8.
If you looked at his brisket, I remember that he was just bigger.
I think he was a 2-year-old buck. So I walk up to him and I'm like, oh gosh, he is just kind of a 2-point. He's just kind of unique. He's like fairly heavy. He comes out and then he just kind of stops and like his main beams, kind of blade out a little bit and they're discolored on the tips, almost like the velvet stayed there extra long and just kind of stained the main beams.
And one of them was like rounded over.
Like they're just kind of like blunted off on the tips, both of them, like very symmetrical for kind of how odd they were. One of his G1s was broken, one of his brows was broken, and I was like, well, whatever, he dead now, and got a buck, and I was excited about it. I go to move him because I was like, oh, I'll take some self pictures with him, and I just grab his horn and go to move his head, and it immediately relieves itself from his skull and is like without a whole lot of pressure. I'm like, oh boy, that's different. I've never had that before. And I'm just left holding his horn. And you might be like, oh, that's an early shed buck, Mark. No, a significant portion of his skull came with the horn, and I'm holding the horn in my hand and peering down into his head. And that was just something a little bit foreign to me.
Yeah.
So
it was pretty bizarre. I remember coming over and was like, Mark, you got a buck. And you're like, yeah, here's half of his head. And it was like, wasn't ready for that.
I thought you had dispatched him.
No,
Yeah.
And just a little bit bizarre. We kind of surmised, possibly it happened in a fight during the rut. I mean, he smelled ruddy for sure.
Yep.
But then also like, or like some sort of vehicle incident where he got hit by a car. I actually leaned towards the vehicle, and perhaps he was recovering from that injury, but that is also what affected like his kind of general, somewhat odd antler growth.
Yeah,
sure.
Do you think it was it didn't have anything to do with the Chevy bow tie that was like stamped into his neck? Was it? Yeah,
but it was cool. Got a nice buck, and all in all, maybe a good one to take off the place. I think
you did him a favor.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, does he succumb to that injury this winter? I don't know.
That was definitely a massive skull fracture.
I mean, when you can, like, that piece of skull was not connected to anything. I mean, it slipped. The other thing too, like, it's almost like he had to have, for lack of a better term, like I feel like the hair surrounding that, like it had to be almost like rotten because it just slipped through.
Well,
like there wasn't a stitch of hair
No.
on that skull or underneath the
it was just
pedicle or
white.
anything.
It was just bone.
It was like
absolutely clean.
As if you were to yank a tooth from a socket.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
You got to think about how, because that woods area over there, and that's something to be even discussed for future deer camps and what we even do over there, because it's so overgrown. I mean, it just has so many invasives in it. It's frustrating to even look at. But anyway, it's so thick. It's horribly thick. And it's not even it's all thick underbrush. You know what I mean? So it's not even stuff that you can see under. And then it's tall enough you can't see over it either.
I think it's thick that a lot of the deer can't get through it that well either.
Yeah, and if his head is that fragile, I don't know how he ever would have even walked through any of that stuff without half his head just falling off from bumping into something.
Maybe that's why he was bedding in the marsh. Because I actually have a feeling. I think he just stood up.
Can you imagine how much of a migraine you're going around with if half your skull is just hanging on by like loose skin holding it there?
Ugh.
Oh, yeah. There's no. I wouldn't ever walk through the woods either. Bump one single thing. Ugh.
Very tender.
You remember how bad it felt when you got a crack in your tooth, Ryan?
Oh yeah.
Probably a similar feeling.
Yeah. Pulled that tooth right out.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Ryan, you had some action that night as well, yes?
I did right off the bat. As I got into the blind, I looked out, and at 800 and some yards, there's two does grazing in the egg. And I thought, well, that's cool. And that was like late afternoon. That wasn't even in the evening. That was like 2:00. And watched them for a good amount of time, and then the witching hour occurred. We hit that magic moment on the clock, and the two does were still out there, but out into the field pops a regal coyote. And I'm not one to smoke a coyote just to smoke a coyote. Now, Jim, this is a working farm.
I've had some issues with coyotes.
And so they're on the list, like brothers in a bad place. And then all of a sudden, a doe shows up to my left at a distance of perhaps 15 yards and is underneath then the stand. She walks out, and I'm like, she is legitimately under the stand. And not like I can't do anything because she's right there.
I remember you texted. We had the other fun thing about a deer camp or when you're hunting with a group, the text string.
Yeah.
The group chat was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It was too active for being out hunting, but
Yes.
I was there for it.
Yeah.
That's the problem also. You find yourself, it's like, bzz, 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 and then you're like, you want to check it,
Oh,
but
yeah,
you're
Mark
like,
probably
also
doesn't
want to
know
be
how.
hunting.
Mark probably doesn't know how to put his phone on Do Not Disturb, so he was probably buzzing the whole time. There's a way you can make it not buzz.
Oh, it even does not that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, you said I've got a doe directly underneath me, and I think I said shoot through the floor. Jim can patch the holes.
Yeah. And then that ended up being 4 does, because then they just kind of came out of the woods. And I thought, okay, perfect. This is a ripe opportunity to take a nice doe. And they started walking directly away from me, but in a line and kind of group tight enough that I wasn't keen on pushing a solid monolithic projectile through one in fear of hitting another. And as they started to move out further and further, and they're coming into line with this coyote was at like 356 yards. Does were, going from 150 to 175 to 2 to 2.25. I thought, this is going to work pretty slick, because what's going to happen is I'm going to shoot one of those does, I'm going to cycle out and shoot the coyote. And this is kind of like a McNabb situation. And I'm thinking, this is going to be cool. I haven't done anything like this in a long time. Do some cowboy stuff. And eventually, like the does are walking right at the coyote, which was really cool. And they got to about 2.25, and he just kind of slowly slunk into one of the windbreaks, into the willows. And that was the last time I saw him. It wasn't that they were alarmed, and it wasn't that he was alarmed. They just kind of yeah, hey, good to see you. And then went off the other way. Finally, one of the larger does peels off from the group and gives me a semi-broadside presentation, 236 yards. The little howl 6 arc barks. Very quietly, though.
I was going to say, not
Very
much of
quiet.
a bark.
Yep, very quietly. And she made it all at 10 yards, tipped over. The 3 that were remaining ran with her for a moment because I didn't quite understand what was going on. We just took off. She fell over and they went right back to feeding. And then I heard a kerfuffle to my right, and I looked over and there's 5 does kind of looking around like, what was that? And they just went back to feeding and wandering around.
I'll tell you what.
Why does anyone hunt without a can? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what? New rule at your camp.
Yeah.
Can't show up. You don't get a suppressor.
Can't show up if you don't have a can. Honestly, it'll be super easy, though, because why would anybody show up to camp without a can?
Yeah. I mean, it's a common courtesy to the landowner and to the neighbors. And
Well, it's just pretty simple now, very well documented. There's a lot of good suppressors out there. There's a lot of guns that come ready to accept a suppressor. Yeah. It's much more pleasant. I mean, I can't think of any reason.
I feel targeted.
What?
Oh, that's right. You didn't have. Sorry, buddy. Yeah,
suppressor bullying.
Yeah.
What you described, Ryan, though, and I've seen it before, and I guess I've seen deer react differently, when they walk by one of their dead counterparts.
Yep.
But oftentimes there is just a extreme level of indifference.
Yep, completely.
Dude, when you're a deer, you just accept that the world is a terrible place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She lay down. And it was a gentle death. There wasn't thrashing or anything like that. She took off. It was a good hit. She took off and then just fell, and she was dead. And the others, like I said, were kind of in tow, and walked up and looked down, and there was about a 5-second assessment, and then no spooky, no like weird behavior, just and then right back to feeding.
Yep.
And tail flicks, nothing to be alarmed about. The 5 to the right, which were at a distance of about 110, 115. They looked over there. They kind of saw what was going on in the field. They're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're just going to eat this way now. And they just kept feeding until it got too dark to even see them. They just kind of disappeared over by some machinery.
Was it 3 does that you said you saw walking in a line, or 4?
It was 4. I selected 1.
You selected 1. Now,
Yep.
you said that it seemed like there was a Goldilocks type deal going on, where
in
there
fact.
was a mother, it seemed, or
Yep.
a grandmother, and then,
Yep.
the 3rd generation. Who was the 4th, though?
There was 2 very mature does.
Okay.
I selected the one that had the least amount of attention from the 2 immature does. And so the 2 immature does were certainly hanging around one more than the other. And so the one that was, I'm not going to say excluded from the group, but the one that seemingly was an independent actor in this, that was the one I ended up shooting. Which leads then into the next morning.
The next morning when I decided to just keep
JP
working.
shot a doe that night too.
That's right. JP
Oh, yeah, he did.
shoot a doe.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you came and picked me up. We loaded up, and then how did we picked
just
JP
went over
up?
to went over to get Mark.
His was
and
really
JP.
not too far from mine.
No. Yeah, that was a nice haul. That was a wagon load of meat.
It was nice to be like,
Yep.
we got nothing in the morning, and then all of a sudden just like boom,
We're busy.
3 deer
People were
hanging
getting
up.
It's like everybody kind of gave it the morning and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
things just got serious.
That's the way it goes.
Which was great.
But yeah, the next morning I decided to work my way further down the family tree, though.
Yes,
Because
you
I
did.
sat in the same spot. The same deer came out in a line, and I
Yep.
took the next biggest one, and then the little one, I only saw there was 2. Well, actually, no, there was 3, but there was one that was kind of more independent. I saw 2, though. Took the big one. The little one ran in a big circle, came back out, standing broadside. In that time, I text the neighbor, because I'm like, I'm just going to take one this year. We got a lot of stuff coming up. And so I'm like, that's all I'm going to have time to deal with, yada, yada. And, but in that time that little one is doing a big full circle, I text the neighbor, hey, you want any venison? And he had his buck that he shot earlier in archery season, pop CW positive. So he texts me and he goes, yeah, take any that you can get. I need as much venison as possible. I'm like, got it. She comes back out broadside. Boom. There's one for the neighbor. All right.
Yeah.
Carry on.
That was, I mean, for me personally, a doe like that, kind of like those more yearling type does. I mean, I don't think that there's like a huge taste difference, but I do think they taste a little bit better.
Yeah.
And the hindquarters kind of lend themselves to like being more versatile, because like if you wanted to like cook it whole, it's not so big that it's not going to fit in your oven, or like you could do kind of some cool stuff with it.
Yeah. I think we gotta go on a big dosecapade next year, though.
I'm not against
Ryan
it.
and I even discussed implementing an earn a buck
program.
Snap. Just to further emphasize trying to achieve a better ratio, or maybe even the ratio is fine as is, but it just seems like the big bucks don't really move hardly out there.
That, and I sit out there and I'm like a deer hunter, or a whitetail hunter. Like I don't actively pursue them for trophy quality or otherwise. It's like the opportunity is for eating more than anything. Everybody wants to shoot a big one, so I want to shoot a big one. But
yeah, absolutely.
But if it's like,
yeah, everybody's a meat hunter until a big one
Until
goes
it's
out.
giant, then it's like, oh, look at this mess.
You gotta shoot a doe if you want to shoot. That makes it so easy to be like, yep, boom. There is zero hesitation.
Yep.
None whatsoever. First one you see, zap it, which is totally cool.
I also think, here's what I think too. I think that there is a big pressure that's placed on you as a hunter when you go out, it's opening morning, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm happy to be out here. It's great that it's this time of year again, deer hunting. Well, you go through everything in your mind as to like why you're in your happy place. And then you start seeing deer. And it's like, yeah, there's a little young buck, and there's 5 does, and there's a little yearling thing. And you're like, wow, deer. But then all of a sudden there's this like internal struggle.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I came out to hunt deer. I am out of venison. There are deer in front of me. But there's always this looming idea of a bigger one jumping out. And so then you're waiting for that thing that hasn't happened yet to occur, but time is ticking. And if you just grease one right away,
you're satiated.
It takes the pressure off, because now you're like, boom, venison's in the freezer. Got it. And if you have a suppressor, you didn't blow every deer out of the county for the next 5 hours. So like, cool, I got venison. Now I'll hang around for that, giant buck to maybe walk out. So I think, I don't think it ruins anything to be like, oh yeah, hey, like, can we shoot a doe before you guys shoot a buck? Unless like an absolute Goliath walks out. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, well you didn't see any does and it was like, 7:20 a.m. on opening day, so you can't shoot that one. It's like, no, like absolutely
Right.
blow that thing's lungs out. But
Jim's getting a little rowdy over here.
I had an interesting second morning because I had a flub that I'm public about.
oh yeah.
So I had a lot of deer in front of me morning 2, which is I sat the stand that you shot your buck on the night prior.
Mm-hmm.
And so right away, this is something I haven't gotten to see more than maybe once or twice hunting deer for many years prior. So I'm in the stand and out runs a group of doe. There was 5. And the last doe looks back into the woods, and I thought, okay, either somebody is in tow pushing these things or there's a buck behind him. I'm like, I'd love to see a buck walk out. And they move out, and they're all facing back, and sure as hell, a buck comes out. I called him the micro fork. He had 0 beam length. He went pedicle clean into forks. 0 beam.
Maybe he's a double beamer.
That could be. He was a large enough bodied deer that it would be like, oh, if you hung a 120-inch rack on that thing, I'd say like, oh yeah, he's a three-year-old buck, whatever. No, micro fork.
If you found out, like, if you shot that deer, it'd be so awesome if he did have, like, double main beams.
Yeah.
And, like, people are like, oh, how'd your deer seem? Like, oh, dude, I shot, just, like, kind of leave the particulars out, but I shot a really nice double main beam.
I mean...
Like, oh, that's really neat.
It like...
What did he score? 4.
Yes. So 0 beam, straight pedicle to fork. It was really cool. He was hot on those does. Nose to the ground, running them like crazy in front of me for a few minutes. And of course I'm thinking like, do I make a move on these does? I'm like, oh God, dang it, leave him be. And so he chases them into the swamp, the big marsh. And I'm like, all right, well, cool. See what happens. See if somebody comes back through, and I'm set up. And I don't know if it was about 20 minutes later, a single doe comes out of the woods. Same track that they were on. She's by herself. I wasn't really necessarily keen on taking one of those does that was in the group, because then everybody's in a tizzy. And she's by herself. I'm like, perfect. Mature deer, good size. I'm like, yep, I'm gonna take a high neck shot, very shootable distance for that kind of shot. This is gonna be a great meat critter. I get on her. I'm on my sticks, and I thumb that safety off. There's a 2-stage trigger in the Howa. I take up the slack, and she's just calmly looking perfectly to her left. And I pull the trigger, and the gun goes click. Mark has a great theory on this. So all morning, there's does in front of me earlier. I'm making noise, like bumping into stuff. I've committed to not shooting them. They don't care. They're at a distance of between 20 and 80 yards. They do not care that I am in that position and all the noise that I made. This doe has zero idea that I am present. And
At what range?
She's 130.
Yep.
I dropped the firing pin on an empty chamber because I forgot to load my gun when you and I got out of the truck and went our separate ways to the respective stands. Forgot to cycle in rather. And she came unglued when that firing pin. I mean, like Wile E. Coyote, eyeballs stayed in one direction. She went the other. And Mark's theory is
Scooby-Doo just with the legs. And
Mark's theory is the barrel is pointed at her, acting like a cone amplifier.
Kind of like a megaphone.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that tick of that firing pin sounded so loud.
But it sounded like it was just right over his shoulder.
Yeah. And
I just picture
No, I
like those
think that's
sound waves
100%.
being like just so tightly directed
Yep.
right towards her. And it's a metallic sound.
Yeah.
Something
Here's
they generally don't care for.
And here's the problem. If we want to recreate the scenario and experience it for ourselves, who's going to be the doe?
I got to find the message. It'll take me too long. But she comes unglued, and I just kind of lift my head up. And I'm like, you are a moron. cycle around in. And then she stopped at kind of a considerable distance. I thought, it's too far, and it was a risky angle, and I just let her walk.
At that point, too, it's like, you know what? It wasn't your day.
Yeah, earned it. And then I saw the Micro Fork buck back 180 degrees from where he was. Or no, that wasn't the Micro Fork. That was a different buck. No, it was the Micro Fork. The Micro Fork was back pushing 2 different does, and they went down the trail, and I never got a good shot opportunity at them. Micro Fork buck walks away. And then we decided in that morning that we were going to orchestrate a drive if it had gotten too slow, and the deal was Mark was going to catch up to me, JP was going to catch up to me, I was going to get out, we were going to push ultimately to your cousin, and then we were all going to push.
Style.
Yeah, we were all going to push to you. And JP had kicked up a small forker 6, bedded in about the exact same position that your buck was in that you shot.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And so all of a sudden, JP's coming down. I see him coming down the way there, and out explodes this buck. JP never saw it, and he wouldn't have had a shot either. I mean, that thing went to full court jump. And then we met up, and they gave us a slip in the in between, I guess.
They like that out there.
All in all, though,
Great day, great hunt, great weekend.
yeah, it was really nice. I mean, it's so cool. Not like I'll travel to hunt, I'll drive, but it's like a half hour from my house. Like, you know what I mean?
You can wear slippers,
Wear slippers.
are nice.
There's
Like
heat.
golden tea.
coffee.
A lot of pluses.
Yeah. We got a lot of requests after the deer camp video that we released this year that was of last year's deer camp to do it again, though.
I would. Like, film it wise. Like, kind of like a reoccurring story, which I would. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's cool that it's requested. It was fun to do it this year without the cameras.
Yeah.
It's also fun to do it with, I'm not going to lie, it's like there is an element of fun to do it, of doing it with the cameras. And not because I really care about being in front of a camera, but
It's fun to be able to look back.
yeah, we can look back on it. And then it's fun to share that kind of stuff. Because I think any element of like showing that deer hunting is fun to the world is cool.
Yeah.
And
And
then
important
it's not
that-
and then it's not like a. Some people make it out to just it's like it's everything.
Yeah.
It's like it's a job.
Hmm.
Well, and honestly, I mean, when you go online and you watch some of the videos, like it is a job.
Mhm.
You
But
know,
don't take
this is
yourself-
in fact our job. But
it's okay to not take yourself super duper seriously.
It is.
It's
It
okay to
doesn't have you can just go out and just
hang out with friends.
yeah.
I think the
in
vibe
the
of
woods
this
with
hunt,
guns.
I mean,
Yeah.
definitely potential for a big deer. But I think we're all kind of the mindset of like, yeah, like I'd love to get a nice one, but like it's also okay if I don't.
Yeah.
And how fun is it too taking a deer back, hanging it up and just cutting on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just then you're like at that point you're making meat happen.
Mhm.
And that was one thing I was talking with, my cousin who came from out east, and he's like, yeah, there's kind of another group that I hunt with, and we go bow hunting. And he's like, usually those guys, like, they'll shoot a deer and they'll bring it back and then they'll send it off somewhere and get it processed, and most of them just donate the meat. And so then when we came back and we had like 3 carcasses, he's like, so where are we going to take it? And we're like, right here.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys are going to do it? We're like, yep. Buckle up.
Yeah.
Gonna
It's
get a
fun.
little bloody.
I enjoy it. Like it's fun to break it apart, and you lift a heavy cooler and you're like, I have something. I did something. I ate on that deer the other night.
Mhm.
Hannah and I had backstrap sous vide.
Yeah.
2.5 hours at 127.5. Quick little sear in the same butter that Mark had.
Good butter. And it's also, I know you can play this game both ways in terms of like cost and value of the deer, of the meat that you get from deer hunting. Because of course, like you're buying gun, you're buying ammo, you're buying a tag, which in Wisconsin really like that part is very minimal cost. But anyway, like get a gun anyway. Don't just get one for deer hunting. Like get a gun, get your ammo anyway. Like that stuff don't factor into the cost of the meat. Like, but the cost of a tag is pretty minimal considering how much meat you can leave with.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say tag, I should say tags.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're cutting it up yourself, you're not paying anybody additional fees to do that. CWD test is free. So, and you get to enjoy a super fun weekend.
Yep.
So you go and you do something fun, and then you get a bunch of meat at the end. And
Well, how many things do you do for, I guess, for lack of a better term, entertainment? But then, like at the end of it, like
that, like pay off?
yeah,
You don't
Yeah.
take anything home from it.
right. Like
you're
Till-
like,
you go out for dinner and a movie that's really fun.
Yep.
But it's gone.
yeah.
You don't.
You don't
like,
take if you go to see Top Gun, it's not like you take Tom Cruise home in a cooler.
No, you don't, Jim.
It's a little dark, huh?
All I'm thinking of is like him jumping up and be like, yeah.
You open the
Whoa.
cooler.
Might fit in a cooler,
Okay.
like whole, alive.
Yeah.
Dude, I think he's
Great guy.
phenomenal actor.
You know,
And
yeah.
whatever fountain of youth he drank from at some point in time, like you watch original Top Gun and like the new Top Gun, you're like, I mean, you look different, but like he's aged well.
He doesn't look worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I digress.
You're gonna be on one of those true crime series. Should have seen it coming
Yeah.
when they were
No.
talking about putting Tom Cruise in a cooler.
No, I don't have plans of that. Let that be clear. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Anything else? Like we kind of ended with that little deer drive. Tried to make one last final push. Kicked the deer around a little bit, but nothing crazy happened. And I guess we finished processing those deer kind of that afternoon, and then that was it. Till next year.
Yeah. Makes me like hunting deer.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to get out with you guys, hang out, chill.
Love it.
Yeah, make some meat, like Jim said.
Yeah. Would you like to see a video of next year's hunt? We don't even know if we'll do it, but maybe.
Let us know. Let us know if,
Plinko board.
and if you
I mean,
haven't.
we're going to be hunting, but
Well,
yeah.
and if you're listening to this and you didn't watch the video that we did last year's hunt, check it out on the Vortex Nation YouTube channel.
You know what I really
It's
liked
there.
about that video? Eric's dad,
Oh yeah,
the Gary Camp.
Dude, yeah,
Unbelievable. Hilarious.
truly.
Yeah.
I will point out also, point of order, because I petitioned that this make it into the video because it was kind of one of the highlights, one of my personal highlights of that hunt. I did see a nice little buck the first night of last year's hunt. but it didn't make the video. We had really good footage of it. He came in. He came in from like probably 400 yards all the way into like 50 yards or something like
I'd
that.
have shot that buck.
He was so I bow hunted there last year, and he like I'd seen the 7-point a couple times during the bow season, and didn't shoot him, and then he was kind of my buddy, and then that's who I was like, oh, there's a buck, and I was getting ready to shoot him, and I'm like, oh, let's see what happens. I'm like, oh, he's not that big, and I'm like, oh, it's my guy. And then actually, I will say this, Ryan. I can't remember. I think we did a hunt recap of that hunt on the podcast. And I'm talking about last year's hunt. We're texting back and forth, and you're like, I shot a little buck. My heart sank.
Oh, no.
Boy, Mark.
I was like,
Geppetto.
oh, no. my buddy. It was straight 2-point that you shot.
Yeah.
So he's out there. Maybe he's still out there. I don't know.
Indeed, maybe.
I wish him well, unless I encounter him at a much older age class, at which point I will start shooting. All right, awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Jim, Ryan, thanks for another super fun deer camp. We all shot deer, just super fun. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. Like I said, if you haven't watched last year's hunt, check it out.
Indeed.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Form a deer camp.
Yeah.
Bye.
See ya.